Hello, everybody. This is Michael Butterman, music director of the Boulder Philharmonic Orchestra, and I'm so pleased today to be talking with my friend Angela Brown, soprano, who joined us back in February of 2013 now for a performance of Richard Danielpour's A Woman's Life, a song cycle based on poetry of Maya Angelou. And she also sang the soprano solo in the Brahms Requiem for that performance. And so we are going to talk a little bit right now about the, in particular, A Woman's Life, and then lead into a video of the recording of that wonderful piece. So first of all, Angela, why don't we just talk for a second about the way that this piece came about? It grew out of, as I'm remembering, an experience that you had working on an opera by Mr. Danielpour. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. Well, first of all, so nice to see you again. God bless you and everything you're doing and your family during this pandemic and the social unrest.
Thank you so much.
All pulled together. Now, A Woman's Life was the brainchild of Richard Danielpour. I had gone to Richard when I was working on his opera, Margaret Garner, and we had a good rapport. And I said to him one day, just very casually, tongue in cheek, I said, Richard, have you ever thought about doing a song cycle for me? And he was like, no, but let's talk about it. So he then began to think about who he would use as the librettist. And he came to me, he says, well, Angela, if I did do this song cycle for you, who would you want to be the librettist? Again, I said in a very Angela Brown way, oh, well, we've already had Toni Morrison. Why don't we go with Maya Angelou this time? Clearly joking, but he was serious. He said, that's exactly who I had thought about asking to do this libretto because she was a friend of his. Right. So he and his wife went to see Dr. Angelou in Winston-Salem, and she had pulled 7 pieces from her collected works because he had asked her to pen this, and she said, oh, it's already done. And he says, well, where are these? She said, in my collected works. So she pulled out, I think, 8 poems, and he set 7 of them, and it's called A Woman's Life. And so it chronicles a woman's life from early childhood on through middle to older age. And it's been wonderful to work on this project.
It is an amazing perspective of life itself, in that it really takes you through the stages thereof. And I think in some ways that's why it struck me as a good balance with the Brahms Requiem. The Brahms Requiem is a piece perhaps a little bit more about the, not so much the person who passed, let's say, but the people who are living, and an examination of life itself and its cycles, that it has its beginning, but it also has its end, and the wisdom that you gain along the way. And it was interesting, Richard wrote to me a few times when we were doing this and had said that the Brahms Requiem was actually in his mind as he was writing this piece. But yet the musical contents to me is really, it's all his own, but it has moments that, well, it's just very, very varied, I would say. There are sort of bluesy moments in My Life Has Turned to Blue, as one would perhaps expect, vibraphone and so on. The last piece, such gorgeous writing, feels to me a little bit like Bernstein in some respects. There's a little bit of Copland in there, maybe Menotti. I don't know, but then it's all Danielpour, I suppose, is probably the best.
American.
Yeah, and American.
American. I tell Richard that he writes like the American quilt. You get snatches of gospel, of spirituals, of opera, of musical theater, of jazz, of blues. You hear everything because that's all American, even though he is Persian American.
Indeed, right. Mm-hmm. As he is. So that's very well put. So when I was trying to describe all the different influences, you're right. It's just it's a quilt. It's the American quilt, which is a composite of the different cultures that have made this country what it is, and so on. That's one of the reasons it's such an interesting piece musically, as it kind of reflects that stature. Are we well, let me put it this way. But tell me a little bit about the particular poems. I guess he chose, or she chose 8, and I think he set 7 of them, if I'm not mistaken. Do you have a favorite among them, or one that you feel especially suits your, I don't know, your personality or your voice, or do you
Well,
feel like each one of them has its own?
I think each one of them has its own personality per se, because the way I chose to look at this song cycle is I saw it as little vignettes of a woman's life. I really did. And what I have been doing, especially when I first got this song cycle, is that I would perform the first 4, which is Little Girl Speakings, which is a young prepubescent girl, like 8 or 9, who is sitting maybe on the stoop, and she's got her doll, and she's talking about her daddy, her dolly, and her mama's good cooking. And then there is the other one is Life Doesn't Frighten Me Anymore.
Right.
And that is where we have someone that's coming into age, and she's not afraid of the shadows on the wall or the noises down the hall, because life doesn't frighten her at all. And I like that one because it's fast, it's contrapuntal, it moves, it gyrates, and then she has a lot of personality in that.
That's right.
Then we have the third one, which is They Went Home. And this is one where there's a young woman who is experimenting in life and love, and probably doing it with people she has no business doing it with, that aren't hers to love. And the whole thing is, they find me beguiling, they find me beautiful, my home is fabulous, I'm mysterious and lovely, but they went home. Okay. And then the fourth one that I like to do is entitled Come and Be My Baby. I imagine this is a young woman that has a job, that's with her cohorts after work. They're having a couple of drinks and talking about the world and everything that's going on in it. And she says, don't think about that anymore. Just come and be my baby. Now, those are the first 4 that I normally perform, or I did normally perform all the time, because I felt more akin to those. I had experienced those. The last 3 are about life. And I didn't feel comfortable in those clothes. The Let's Majest, I'm still trying to ingest, because it's one that I even had to ask Dr. Angela, what's this one mean?
Right.
And then there's My Life Has Turned to Blue.
Right.
And then there is Many and More.
Right.
Life Has Turned to Blue is so ethereal that you really have to feel that one, and then My Life Has Turned to Blue, I started adding that to the end of the first 4. So in essence, doing 5 of the pieces, because it is one that I'm just a little bit close to. I can empathize with, because this is a woman that has come to older age, and she has lived and loved, and she's just sitting back, and she's thinking about end of life things, and that she just wants her love to come and be with her during this end time. So I can relate closely to the first 4, and I empathize with number 5, but in number 6, number 6 I'm okay with, but that number 5, I'm still working on
that. Well, fair enough. I hadn't thought about that aspect of this, which is that yes, you as a human being have experienced part of this arc journey, and the rest you haven't yet. And so to get into to channel the experience of someone who's really looking back at their whole life from what is probably the end of it, that requires a bit of a, I guess, as you say, empathy, or an actress. You have to imagine what it might be like. That you cannot draw on your own personal experience to kind of
Yeah.
embody that. And yet, do we know, or do you know, when Dr. Angeli wrote these poems, was she at the very stages in her life when, well, probably not when she probably was not, let's say 8 or 9 when she wrote Little Child Speakings, but you know, did she write them over a long period of time? Do you know, or were they done sort of all relatively in short succession, or do you know?
Well, they were over a scope of time because these were in her actual collected works.
Right.
So from whenever she started writing to whenever she ended writing. So that would be the scope of her life.
Right. Well, it really, they are, as literary works, incredibly poignant, beautiful, evocative. And then I think when married to the music that Richard wrote, they take on an added just power and ability to really communicate to the heart. I mean, I like you am probably somewhere along that same path of life, and I'm certainly not a woman, so I can't. I don't have the perspective that that one might have if I were a different gender, and I'm not African American. So I obviously, but yet you feel the humanity in these pieces.
She's a human.
There you go.
I mean, if we took the color out of it, it's just what has happened to a female woman. That was stupid, but a female within the scope of her life, regardless of the color, you know, because I don't think in these things, her race, you know, came into being. It's just what she was feeling
Right.
as a young woman or a middle-aged woman or an older woman, you know, a human.
Indeed. Absolutely right. Well, I hope we can do it. You and I have done the piece. We did it in Boulder, obviously. We did it in Jacksonville, Florida. We're supposed to do it in Rochester, but I need to get you to a couple other orchestras I work with so we can do that. And frankly, we need to get you back to Boulder to either do this or something else. I mean, it's even been 7 years for this piece, and I know you have a wide repertoire, don't get me wrong, but this is a very special piece, and I think it would bear repeating really any time.
I would love, if we're talking about programming, I would love to come back and do Strauss' 4 Last Songs and this piece together.
Okay.
Yes! And maybe you can look at William Grant Still's From the Hearts of Women. That would be another one to put together. Maybe not all 3 of those on a program, but they are short enough to all be put together.
Here it is. So this is how programs happen, folks. You know, one idea is kind of sparks something else in someone, and then oh yes, maybe that could, you know, and this will happen. So so look for this in the coming year or two. You may find something related to what we just talked about. You know, actually, Angela, you and I, we've known each other. Oh, it's a while.
A few years, baby.
A few years. There we go. Back when we were students at Indiana University, the first time we worked together, and we did a piece there called 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
That's now called Black Lives Matter Way.
Well, there it is.
Okay.
Exactly right. And in fact, that piece, for people that don't know, and they probably don't because it's not all that well known, is a work that Leonard Bernstein and Alan J. Lerner wrote together in a couple of years leading up to the bicentennial in 1976. And it is a piece that chronicles the lives of the presidents and their wives, the presidents, first ladies, as well as the lives of the African-American staff.
Upstairs, downstairs kind of thing.
Exactly. Who were attending the presidents over a period of time. And the piece is the characters constantly step out of character to become the actors or actresses that they are, reacting as contemporary individuals to what historically their characters are experiencing. And the piece is I think it's a challenging one, a little bit fraught in terms of the drama and so on. But it also kind of touched on some perhaps nerves that in 1976, a lot of theater goers anyway, perhaps weren't in the mood to engage with. which had to do with, of course, America's original sin of slavery, the legacies of which we're still
Hmm.
understanding and experiencing and witnessing
Time for
today.
everybody to open their eyes and deal with it,
That's it. So
because
that the
it's going to
piece,
keep happening. It's going to keep repeating itself if we don't. So yeah, that's exactly what this piece was about.
it was and is, and I wonder if the piece won't, take on
Be
what
resurrected again.
a little bit. I mean, interesting, especially that beautiful, take care of this house, that gorgeous ballad that,
Yeah.
which is in which the house is referring to 1600 pence, the White House, but really it's a metaphor for the country itself and the ideals that it does stand for, but that it has yet to quite well, it has yet to fully realize for everybody. That one, to me, seems today ever ever current somehow in the moment in which we find ourselves. So you have maybe I just end this a little bit by talking about some of the other projects you're involved in. Obviously, you sing major opera roles with major companies all over the world, but you have another project that you're working on and that you share with people, called Opera from a Sister's Point of View. And
Opera from a sister's point of view, honey. You got to lean back on it now and loosen that up.
tell us just a little bit about what that is, how you came up with this, and what its mission is, and how you share that with people.
Well, Opera from a sister's point of view came about when I was at IU. I was doing the Birgit Nielsen competition, and my agent and her husband were driving me across country from Bloomington, Indiana to New York City. And in the backseat of the car, I had a yellow legal pad, and I was writing down different titles for shows, because I knew at the time when I was at IU that opera companies weren't always going to be checking for me. I may not always be employed at an opera company or a symphony orchestra. So I wanted something that I could also do in the breaks.
Sure.
And this was a show that was meant to be a vehicle to edutain, if you will, school age children, communities, and the like. So Opera from a Sister's Point of View came into fruition. It's a show that demystifies opera for audiences that normally wouldn't go. And as I started doing this show, I found out, at first I thought it was all Black people, because I didn't see a lot of Black people in audiences across the world. Okay, yeah. Sitting and watching operas. And at first I thought it was just a Black thing. Then I found out white folks don't like opera either. It's about being exposed and letting them know that you too can find yourself in opera. Opera is a melting pot. The stories are so varied. I don't care how many people you paint up. Aida is about African peoples, two warring African nations. And then you have Turandot or Madame Butterfly, which are about Asian populations. You have Carmen, which is about Latino or Hispanic populations. You have Porgy and Bess, which is about an African American experience. So you can find yourself in opera. You just have to have an open mind to it, and maybe someone to present it in a way that's fun and tongue-in-cheek and a little whimsical, but then gives you good operatic singing, which is what I'm hoping that I'm doing. And with that, I started a foundation called Morning Brown, which brings culture to cultural deserts. So I go into the school systems, I go into the communities, and I sing. I do this opera from a sister's point of view, and I also offer master classes and lectures, and I also offer the opportunity for other young performers, regardless of their ethnicity, to join me on stage, and I give them a platform on my platform so that they too can be introduced to a public that would be like, that's the future of opera. So I started this because of a need and a want, and it has bloomed into something that has also been able to help other singers and
Indeed. Well,
communities.
it's a beautiful uh, thing that you're doing, and we got a little taste of that in Boulder. You sang a recital at the Boulder Public Library with Bob Spellman actually as your pianist, which included a little bit of the work that you have presented as part of this project. But if we get you back to do, let's say, the four last songs and the Danielpour, then we would need to make sure that we got you out into the schools and
That's
really
right.
take advantage of this other aspect of what you bring.
Yes,
So
I would love it. I would love it.
let's mark us down for that then. All right. Well, Angela Brown, it has been so great to see you again. I hope you and your family are well. I know I'm speaking to you right now from your home in Indianapolis, and we all of us are thinking of one another at this time, hoping that we're obviously physically well, but also spiritually and otherwise. There are a lot of challenges that we're all facing right now in so many aspects. But speaking with someone like you, it just kind of lifts my day up, and I hope it does that for those that have joined us for this interview as well. And please stay tuned, because we're going to link you then to a recording of this gorgeous, gorgeous and deeply felt work by Richard Danielpour as sung by Angela Brown. So thank you again, Angela, for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. God bless you all.
God bless you.
Keep hope alive.